So it's story time. Yes, Goomba, story time. No, this is about the Super Nintendo. The Super Nintendo is my favorite system of all time. It doesn't even come close, guys. I have 30 games that I'm going to be going through today that are by far the most important ones from my childhood from the Super Nintendo. Do I love more than 30 games? Hell yes, I do. I love hundreds of games for the Super Nintendo and the Super Famicom. But this is the 30 that really matter to me. So it's going to be a mix of the specs, the technical, what it's about, but then it's going to be my personal opinions and stories on it as well, guys. I hope you really enjoyed this video. It was a lot of damn work, a lot more work than I wanted to do for free, and I'll tell you right now, if you're a Super Nintendo fan, you don't want to miss this one. Enjoy it, guys.
Hello everyone. In all my decades of playing games, no other system brought me as much joy as the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. I remember getting it for my birthday on my family's only vacation we took together. I shook with excitement as I opened the box and ran to the TV to hook it up to play the included game Super Mario World. However, little did I know that the greatest game of my lifetime would come out 4 years later. To me, there is no greater pleasure than to experience a game that transcends the art form into an experience we've never seen before. When you can feel the love put into it, that the game itself is a higher calling, teaching us lessons we never knew we needed at the time. A connection that grounds us, yet sends our imaginations soaring into the clouds. Some games are played, others are lived. Over the years there's been many great games. Games that challenged us, games that let us roleplay a hero facing impossible odds. Some games brought about amazing storylines, and some brought amazing combat. Time traveling games is very common. When done correctly, it provides us, the gamer, an amazing experience never to be forgotten. However, when it is done poorly, these games get lost to time itself. This video will be full of personal stories, reflections of how these games made me feel during my childhood and even today. If you like this video, please let us know in the comments below. If you enjoy retro games like we do, please consider subscribing. We do deep dives into all retro games that you grew up on, and we involve our community in our content. Without further ado, let's start playing with power, superpower, and I hope you enjoy.
Tiko, I want to pick Koopa this time.
Super Mario Kart is a 1992 kart racing video game developed and published by Nintendo for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The first game of the Mario Kart series, it was released in Japan and North America in 1992, and in Europe the following year in 1993, selling 8.76 million copies worldwide. The game went on to become the fourth best-selling SNES game of all time. Super Mario Kart was very special to me. It was my go-to game when friends came over. I prided myself on being the best in my community. Everyone eventually had this game who had a Super Nintendo. I even took part in an official competition at the time. Nowadays, Mario Kart has become cheap. Items do not rely on skill as much, and honestly, the Super Nintendo version of Mario Kart is still my favorite version. This game is available on the Switch Online service. It's also available on the SNES Classic, as well as the original Super Nintendo, so there's lots of ways to experience this great game.
Tiko, do you know the best value in gaming in history? It's this cart, folks.
Super Mario All-Stars is a 1993 compilation of platform games for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It contains remakes of Nintendo's 4 Super Mario games released for the Nintendo Entertainment System and the Famicom Disk System: Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, Super Mario Bros. 2, and Super Mario Bros. 3, and the later included Super Mario World. As in the original games, players control the Italian plumber Mario and his brother Luigi through 3 worlds, collecting power-ups, avoiding obstacles, and finding secret areas. The remakes feature updated graphics, including the addition to parallax scrolling, and music, modified game physics, and bug fixes. Nintendo Entertainment Analysis and Development developed the compilation after the completion of Super Mario Kart in 1992. If you watched our Nintendo Games That Raised Us retrospective, you will know that I am a huge Mario fan. I cannot think of a game that offers more value than Super Mario All-Stars plus Super Mario World for any system to date. These complete remasters were so perfectly done, they almost made the originals obsolete in every way. When I would have friends over, we would often pick a game and go through its entirety. In fact, several of my sleepovers we finished each and every game on the cartridge. I did not own the Super Mario's All-Star plus Super Mario World game until later on in life. When I was younger, I only had the original. However, the cart offers even more value, especially with the Luigi sprite upgrades in Super Mario World. If you get a chance to play this game, it will keep you entertained for weeks, and will keep you coming back for more years later like it does for me. I consider this game easily one of the best games for the Super Nintendo, and certainly an amazing remaster of all the games that were included in the cartridge.
The last Tiko is in captivity. The galaxy is at peace.
Super Metroid is an action-adventure game developed and published by Nintendo for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in 1994. It is the third installment in the Metroid series, following the events of the Game Boy game Metroid 2: Return of Samus in 1991. Players control bounty hunter Samus Aran, who travels to the planet Zebes to retrieve an infant Metroid creature stolen by the space pirate leader Ridley. Following the established gameplay model of its predecessors, Super Metroid focuses on exploration, with the player searching for power-ups used to reach previously inaccessible areas. It introduced new concepts to the series, such as an inventory screen, an auto map, and the ability to fire in all directions. The developers wanted to make a true action game and set the stage for Samus's reappearance. Super Metroid received acclaim, with praise for its atmosphere, gameplay, music, and graphics. It is often cited as one of the best video games of all time. This game sold well and shipped 1.42 million copies worldwide by late 2003. Super Metroid was one of those games for me and my friends that was very special. It offered an atmosphere like no other. The music and the sense of dread of hitting Zebes was just amazing at the time. The bosses were simply incredible, and everything about this game screamed AAA title for the time. Super Metroid is often cited as one of the best video games of all time, and why not? It brought so many new things to the table. It's hard to imagine another game that changed the industry as much as Super Metroid.
Tiko, do you love playing as Zelda with her sword? I mean, his sword? Who's Zelda and who's Link? I don't understand what's happening.
The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past is an action-adventure game developed and published by Nintendo for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It is the third game in the Legend of Zelda series, and was released in 1991 in Japan and 1992 in North America and Europe. The story is officially set many years before the events of the first two Zelda games. The player assumes the role of Link as he journeys to save Hyrule, defeat the Demon King Ganon, and rescue the descendants of the Seven Sages. Released to critical and commercial success, A Link to the Past was a landmark game for Nintendo. It's considered one of the greatest games of all time. My first experience with this title was actually from my local electronics shop. I rented this game. I didn't know what to do because actually it had a save state on it that was a little further ahead than the beginning of the game. So when I finally figured that out and I started playing the game, I could not believe the sense of scale, the adventure, the music, the bosses, everything about this game. I actually said to my parents, you know what? I need this game. It's too good, and I want it now. I had to wait several months. I did eventually get this game, and I played through it at least 100 times.
Tiko, do you know the secret to Snow Barrel Blast?
Donkey Kong Country is a 1994 platform game developed by Rare and published by Nintendo for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It is a reboot of Nintendo's Donkey Kong franchise and follows the gorilla Donkey Kong and his nephew Diddy Kong as they set out to recover the stolen banana hoard from King K. Rool and the Kremlings. In 40 side-scrolling levels, the player collects items, defeats enemies and bosses, and finds secrets. In the multiplayer modes, two players can work together cooperatively or race against each other. I had gotten Donkey Kong Country for Christmas. At the time, there was nothing like it. The pre-rendered 3D graphics from Silicon Graphics were out of this world at the time. I remember seeing the poster and its colors and just the way everything looked. It reminded me of an old cartoon that I used to watch called Reboot that was here in Canada. Donkey Kong Country was not just a great looking game though. The music was incredible. Also, you could play two players simultaneous with a tag team option, or you could play two players taking turns. Aquatic Ambiance is one of the best tracks ever heard on the Super Nintendo. It's amazing what was done with the sound chip for this game, and the music really does match the graphical fidelity here. This is a must play.
Tiko, look! Let's go kill Dracula.
Super Castlevania 4 is a 1991 platform game developed and published by Konami, released originally for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It has been re-released multiple times, including for the Super Nintendo Classic Edition. Super Castlevania 4 features expanded play control, 16-bit graphics featuring SNES Mode 7, and a soundtrack featuring new pieces and arrangements based on previous Castlevania music. Following the same setting as Castlevania on the NES, the game takes place in 1691 Transylvania, where the vampire hunter Simon Belmont must defeat the vampire Dracula. The game received critical acclaim, with some calling it one of the greatest video games of all time. This game was very unique. It was unique in the fact that I had not played it before I actually purchased the game. I actually purchased it based off the Nintendo Power magazine. I saw a section in there actually talking about the game and said, oh my god, that looks amazing. And I really enjoyed the ones for the Nintendo Entertainment System, but when I got it, I was in for a surprise. Not only were the graphics incredible, it utilized Mode 7, but the soundtrack, the music, was beyond anything I had ever heard in a video game up to that point. Actually, it's still one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard. I often go back and play this at Halloween. It always gets me in the mood for a spooky Halloween. We actually featured it on our channel here as a long play and a head-to-head, and I absolutely love this game. And I can't say enough good things about what Konami's done here. If Konami was smart, they would go and they would remaster this game and bring it back to the masses, because it is an absolute masterpiece. Super Castlevania 4 is the perfect mix of atmosphere, music, bosses, and just an enjoyable ride from start to finish. This is a pick up and play game that is hard to master, but when you do, you'll go back for more.
Tiko, are you ready to rock out to the coolest Mega Man game of all time? Here it is, folks.
Megaman X is an action platform game developed and published by Capcom for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It was the first Mega Man game for the 16-bit console and the first game in the Mega Man X series, a spin-off of the original Mega Man series that began on the SNES predecessor, the Nintendo Entertainment System. Mega Man X was released in Japan on December 17th, 1993, and was released in both North America and Europe the following year. Taking place a century after the original Mega Man series, Mega Man X is set in a futuristic world, populated by both humans and Reploids, robots capable of thinking, feeling, and growing like their human creators. Because of these complex attributes, many Reploids are prone to destructive, renegade activity, and are thereafter referred to as Mavericks. Plot of the game follows the protagonist Mega Man X, an android member of the military task force called the Maverick Hunters. With the help of his partner Zero, X must thwart the plans of Sigma, a powerful Maverick leader wishing to bring about human extinction. For those out there that don't know, I am a massive fan of Mega Man. I played them all the way from 1 to 6. With 2 being a personal favorite of mine for the Nintendo Entertainment System. When I was first introduced to Mega Man X, it was actually by a friend of mine. He actually came to my community and stated that a new Mega Man game was out. I had no idea. This was before the internet. So I end up buying this game without playing it before, just based on his word. And man, was I in for a surprise. The electric metal guitar, the bass, the sound, the improvements in graphics, and the overall story was just incredible at the time. I couldn't believe how unique the bosses were. The upgrades from Dr. Light. Everything in this game just screamed detail. I love the way that you could actually get the Street Fighter Hadouken for Mega Man as a secret item in the game.
Tiko, look! Illusion of Gaia! Ooh, it's such a great game.
Illusion of Gaia, known in Europe and Australia as Illusion of Time, is an action role-playing game developed by Quintet for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The game was published by Enix, now Square Enix, in Japan in 1993, and Nintendo published it in North America and PAL territories in 1994 and 1995 respectively. Set in a fantasy reimaging of Earth, the game's plot centers on a boy named Will, who is chosen to save the world from an impending disaster. During the course of the game, The player guides Will through levels based on ancient ruins of the real-world civilizations and the wonders of the world, such as the Great Pyramid and the Great Wall of China. I first saw this game on the Frenzy poster that was included with a lot of Super Nintendo games at the time. I was amazed by the fact that it used real-world locations. It was an amazing game with a lot of depth and really good story. And the fact that you could play as 3 different characters that all had different ways of solving puzzles was really cool. I liked the fact that it was real world locations and the story was actually really good. I recommend this to everybody who hasn't had a chance to play it. What many people don't realize is this is actually part of a triplet of games. It's the Quintet series. It would be considered Soul Blazer, Illusion of Gaia, and then Terranigma. Terranigma was a game that was not released in North America, but it was certainly one of my favorites, and Soul Blazer is considered to be the most popular out of all of them. Amazing games, and this one really stands out as well as a very solid game.
Hey Tiko, Big Apple, 3 a.m.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time, released as Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles: Turtles in Time in Europe, is a beat-em-up arcade video game produced by Konami and released in 1991. A sequel to the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game, it is a scrolling beat-em-up type game based mainly on the 1987 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated series. Originally an arcade game, Turtles in Time was ported to the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in 1992 under the title Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4: Turtles in Time, continuing the numbering from the earlier Turtles games released on the original Nintendo Entertainment System. That same year, a game that borrowed many elements, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Hyperstone Heist, was released for the Mega Drive and Genesis. Turtles in Time is easily one of my favorite games ever made, one of my favorite beat-em-ups for sure, especially for the Super Nintendo. I played this often with my friends. We would both go through the entire game and it only took about 40 minutes. It was perfect for wasting some time and beating up Shredder's baddies. My favorite Ninja Turtle ever is Raphael. Given the choice, I'll always pick Raphael. If I don't have the choice, I'll pick Leonardo. I used to pick Donatello back in the day, and Michelangelo was always the party dude, but he was kind of useless in this game. So given the choice, I'm always going to go red.
Tiko, I need your help. I'll be Rash and you be Pimple. We got this.
Battletoads In Battlemaniacs is a 1993 platforming beat-em-up video game developed by Rare and published by Trade West for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Part of the Battletoads series, the game was released in North America in June 1993, in Europe in October 1993, and in Japan on January 7, 1994. It was also ported for the Sega Master System and released exclusively in Brazil. It was released around the same time as Battletoads and Double Dragon, another installment in the series. Easily one of the hardest games for the Super Nintendo. It certainly draws some relation to the Nintendo Entertainment System title as well. I found that the speeder bike level was the point at which most people basically stopped playing it. They couldn't get past that level, but it actually gets harder from there. I would argue that the tractor level is actually the hardest level in the game. The snake level I found wasn't too bad, but that tractor level is brutal. This is a highly recommended game for people that like a challenge. It is 2 players simultaneous beat 'em up, and I certainly recommend it for people today, especially for fun. I found that this was a very difficult game, but a very rewarding one. It's not really one of those games that I would recommend for people to have a relaxing day, but if you have the patience to play something that's going to challenge you, I don't think you should miss this one.
Tiko Starfox. Look, it's Starfox, named after you.
Starfox, known as Starwing in the PAL regions, is a 3D rail shooter video game developed by Nintendo and Argonaut Software for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The first game in the Starfox series, the story follows Fox McCloud and the rest of the Starfox team defending their homeworld in Corneria against the invading forces of Andros. Starfox was Nintendo's second 3D game after the release of X for the Game Boy in 1992. However, it was Nintendo's first game to use polygonal graphics. It accomplished this by being the first game to ever use the Super Effects Graphics Accelerator coprocessor powered GSU-1. The complex display of 3-dimensional models and polygons was still new and uncommon in console video games. This game received critical acclaim upon release, and is often considered to be one of the greatest video games of all time. This game has sold over 4 million copies, and established the Star Fox series as a flagship Nintendo franchise. I really recommend this game to anybody who likes space shooters. I do kind of think it's a little bit like Panzer Dragoon. I do find that the Rails type shooters where you're consistently going forward are rewarding. I enjoyed the asteroid levels in this, and I actually like the Armada level in which you go into these ships and have to destroy the cores. I really like this game. I really think it was revolutionary at the time. Does it hold up as well today? Well, that could be argued. The frame rate is a little bit sluggish. The graphics are very basic in a 3D environment, but honestly, I do believe this is one of those games that should certainly be played by everybody at some point. If you want to see the beginnings of Nintendo's 3D adventure, Starfox stands up as one of the best games ever made because it was really revolutionary at the time and still stands up well today.
Tiko, let's kill Mother Brain. I mean, the Bacterian Empire?
Gradius 3 is a 1989 scrolling shooter video game developed and published by Konami, originally released for the arcades in Japan and other parts of Asia on December 11, 1989. It is the third game in the Gradius series. The game was ported to the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in Japan in 1990 and in North America in 1991. It served as a launch title for the system in North America. The player pilots the starfighter Vic Fighter Starfighter to battle the onslaughts of the Bacterian Empire. There are a total of 10 levels in this game. This was a game that was very unique. It was a very difficult game in the later stages, but the interesting thing is that the Super Nintendo actually had an advantage in the fact that it was slow. The game slowed down and made some of the harder parts a lot easier. I'm thinking about the bubble level and some of the other levels later on, where there's a lot of enemies and bullets on screen, things really start to slow down. However, there was an SA1 hack release for this game that fixes that problem, that currently seeing footage of. It makes the game way harder and much more rewarding. I would put Gradius 3 as one of the best games for the Super Nintendo and one of my favorite space shoot-'em-ups ever.
Tiko, Hadouken!
Street Fighter II Turbo Hyper Fighting is a competitive fighting game released by Capcom for arcades in 1992. It is the third arcade version of Street Fighter II, part of the Street Fighter franchise, following Street Fighter II Champion Edition, and was initially released as an enhancement kit for that game. Released less than a year after the previous installment, Turbo introduced a faster playing speed and new special moves for certain characters, as well as further refinement to the character balance. This was one of the fighting games that I played the most for the Super Nintendo. I did find that this one and Mortal Kombat 2 were my favorites. I did like Mortal Kombat 3, but Street Fighter II Turbo offered a balance and really amazing characters, and I really liked the way that everything moved. The special moves were great. I do think that this was one of my favorite games. I got this for Halloween one year. I used to play it a lot with my friends.
Tiko, can we be friends?
Mortal Kombat 2 was a fighting game originally produced by Midway for the arcades in 1993. It was later ported to multiple home systems including MS-DOS, Amiga, Game Boy, Game Gear, Sega Genesis, 32X, Sega Saturn, Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and PlayStation only in Japan. Mostly in licensed version developed by Probe Entertainment and Sculptured Software, and published by Acclaim Entertainment, currently distributed as Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment. It is the second entry in the Mortal Kombat series and is the sequel to Mortal Kombat, improving the gameplay and expanding the mythos of the original Mortal Kombat, notably introducing some varied finishing moves, including several fatalities per character and new finishers, such as the Babality and the Friendship, and several iconic characters such as Kitana, Melina, Kung Lao, and Noob Saibot, and the series' recurring villain Shao Kahn. The game's plot continues from the first game, featuring the next Mortal Kombat tournament set in the other dimensional realm of Outworld, with the Outworld and Earth realm representatives fighting each other on the way to challenge the evil Emperor Shao Kahn. First time that I played this is actually when my brother's friend came over with Mortal Kombat 2, and we played it all weekend. It was awesome. Mortal Kombat 2 is one of my favorite fighting games ever. I believe it to be still the best Mortal Kombat game ever. Over-the-top violence when it comes to the level design, and it just comes to the overall atmosphere. Mortal Kombat 2 comes out on top. Shao Kahn is super cheap, I admit, but his design for his stage, I find him to be a very rewarding final boss.
Tiko, make like a Gabby J and yay!
Super Punch-Out is a boxing video game developed and published by Nintendo and for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It was released on September 14, 1994 in North America, and again in the same region in 1996. It was released in Europe on January 26, 1995 for the same console, and in Japan in 1998 for the Nintendo Power Flash RAM cartridge series and the Super Famicom. The game is also included in the SNES Classic, which released in 2017. In Super Punch-Out, the player controls Little Mac as he fights his way to become the World Video Boxing Association champion. Players fighting from a behind-the-back perspective must knock out their opponent in 3 minutes to win. Players can launch jabs, hooks, and uppercuts against their opponents, as well as block, dodge, and duck opponents' attacks. The game received praise from reviewers for its cartoon-like style, its colorful, outlandish opponents, simple gameplay controls, and replay value. The game also featured colorful, detailed graphics, which included the usage of transparency that facilitates the game's behind-the-back perspective. The first time I ever played Super Punch-Out was at my friend's house. He happened to be amazing at the game. I was okay. I mean, I played the original Punch-Out for the Nintendo Entertainment System plenty of times. Actually, I managed to beat Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. However, this one was a little bit different. The abilities in the game were really neat. I did like the super power-up and the rapid power punch. I do really enjoy the unique characters that you fight against. They're really, really cool. Gabby J always makes me laugh. Me and Joy-Koi play this quite often. And it's one of those games that I always go back to just to be able to play through to the completion. I can still do it. I still have everything memorized. And I still enjoy it as much today as I did back then.
Tiko, what's this? Oh, it's Trials of Mana. I mean, Secret of Mana 2, or Seiken Densetsu 3. I don't know what's happening.
Please enjoy Secret of Mana 2's introduction sequence. We'll speak in a moment. Trials of Mana, also known by its Japanese title, Seiken Densetsu 3, is a 1995 action role-playing game developed and published by Square, now Square Enix, for the Super Famicom. It is a sequel to the 1993 game Secret of Mana and the third installment in the Mana series. Set in a high fantasy world, the game follows three heroes as they attempt to claim the legendary Mana Sword and prevent the Benevolence from being unleashed and destroying the world. It features 3 lengthy main plot lines and 6 different possible main characters, each with their own storylines, and allows 2 players to play simultaneously. This was a game that I actually played for the first time on an emulator, ZSNES at the time. I played it at my friend's place. I was blown away. I simply loved Secret of Mana. However, I never even knew a sequel existed, and for it to be in Japanese, we had to play the translated ROM. I was blown away. We both played it together. We actually played it through to completion. Easily one of my favorite action RPGs for the Super Nintendo and the Super Famicom. I go back and I play this one quite often. Me and Joy-Koi have played it, and I plan to do a long play of this game eventually on the channel. Much like Secret of Mana before it, the simultaneous co-op of an action RPG is certainly a unique feature on the Super Nintendo. You see that a lot now with online multiplayer. However, back then, having couch co-op action RPG was very, very rare, and it's certainly something that I go back to enjoy now because it really does stand the test of time.
Tiko, do you know the secret to Evermore?
Secret of Evermore is an action role-playing game for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It was released by Square in North America on October 1st, 1995, and in Europe and Australia in February 1996. A Japanese release was planned to follow the North American release by a few months, but it was ultimately cancelled. The story of Secret Evermore follows a boy and his pet dog as they are inadvertently transported to a fantasy world of Evermore. The first time I ever played this game, I actually played it because I rented it because of the box art. Couldn't believe how big the boss looked. It looked like such a glorious adventure. But man, was I in for a treat. As soon as I rented it, I actually went out that day and bought it, while I still had the rental in hand. But the main reason I bought this game is not because of the graphics, it was because of Jeremy Soule, an American composer who soundtracks the whole entirety of Secret of Evermore. It was his first project in 1995, and it created the atmosphere. I would argue that this has the best soundtrack of any game on the Super Nintendo and keeps me coming back. You may remember Jeremy Soule from such classics as Elder Scrolls, Guild Wars, Icewind Dale, and the Harry Potter series. He is quite the legend in the industry, but I still believe some of his most unique work certainly comes from Secret of Evermore. I love this game, and it's one of my favorites ever.
Look, Tiko, Super Mario RPG. Just got a remake, pretty cool.
Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars is a role-playing game developed by Square and published by Nintendo for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in 1996. It was the final Mario game published for the Super Nintendo. Super Mario RPG's story focuses on Mario and his friends as they seek to defeat Smithy, who has crashed into their world and stolen the 7 star pieces of the Star Road. Super Mario RPG is the first RPG in the Mario franchise, drawing from major elements of Square's RPG franchises such as Final Fantasy. The main form of fighting enemies is turn-based combat with a party of up to 3 characters. It is also the first game in the Mario franchise to have gameplay within the isometric 3D environment, allowing for a new variety of exploration and platforming elements reminiscent of the Super Mario series. Super Mario RPG was critically acclaimed and particularly praised for its humor and 3D rendered graphics. It was the inspiration for Nintendo's other role-playing series, Paper Mario and Mario & Luigi, and both are spiritual successors which retain some gameplay elements. Super Mario RPG was released on the Wii Virtual Console service in 2008, marking its debut in Europe and Australia, and later for the Wii U's Virtual Console in 2016. It was also included with the Super Nintendo Classic Edition in 2017. Mario sets out to rescue Princess Toadstool, infiltrating the castle to which she has been taken and challenging kidnapper King Bowser. During the battle, a giant living sword named Exor falls from the sky, breaks through the Star Road, a pathway that helps grant people's wishes, and crashes into Bowser's castle, sending Mario, Princess Toadstool, and Bowser flying in different directions, as well as scattering the 7-star fragments. Mario lands back at his pad and meets up with Toad, who tells him to rescue Princess Toadstool. Mario returns to Bowser's castle, but Exor destroys the bridge, preventing him from entering. Thus, our adventure begins. I'm gonna go off script for this one. I can honestly say that Super Mario RPG is one of the best games ever made for any system. It was a collaboration between Square and Nintendo, and it was done right. Geno is one of the best characters ever introduced to any of the Nintendo games, and we have not seen him since. Do you know about timed hits? Well, I do. The timed hits and timed defense mechanics of Super Mario RPG still have not been beat in my opinion. The fact that you could press a button at a certain time to make a different thing happen and to reduce your damage to do more damage was an incredible feature. It really added a dynamic to turn-based battles that was never really seen before this point. I would give Super Mario RPG a 10 out of 10 star piece rating, the second best game in my opinion for the Super Nintendo. I think it's also important for me to mention that Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars is one of the only 7 Super Nintendo games released outside Japan that uses Nintendo SA1 chip. Compared with standard SNES games, the additional microprocessor allows these features: higher clock speeds, faster access to random access memory, greater memory mapping capabilities, data storage and compression, new direct memory access such as bitmap and bitplane transfer.
Tiko, Secret of Mana, isn't that a great game?
Secret of Mana, originally released in Japan as Seiken Densetsu 2, is a 1993 action role-playing game developed and published by Square, now Square Enix, for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It is a sequel to the 1991 game Seiken Densetsu, released in North America as Final Fantasy Adventure and in Europe as Mystic Quest, and it was the first Seiken Densetsu title to be marketed as part of the Mana series, rather than the Final Fantasy series. Set in a high fantasy universe, this game follows three heroes as they attempt to prevent an empire from conquering the world with the power of the ancient flying fortress. Rather than using a turn-based battle system like contemporaneous role-playing games, Secret of Mana features real-time battles with a power bar mechanic. The game has a unique ring command menu system, which pauses the action and allows the player to make decisions in the middle of a battle. An innovative cooperative multiplayer system actually allows for a second and even a third player to drop in and out of the game at any time via the multi-tap. The first thing in Secret of Mana that really blew me away besides the vibrant colors was the music. The fact that you could play this simultaneously 3 players with the multi-tap with a drop-in function really separated this from every other game at the time. If you wanted to play 2 players simultaneously, you're probably playing beat 'em up. But here comes a RPG action style with very unique combat that you eventually unlock 3 player modes, which you can switch between the players. This game was absolutely incredible. The bosses, the navigation, the combat, the music, the atmosphere still really have not been topped. It did have a sequel for the Super Nintendo that only released in Japan, but I also mentioned that one in the video already, and Secret of Mana 2 is a great game as well. I recommend
Tiko, is this actually Super Mario World 2? I'm not sure.
Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island is a 1995 platform game developed and published by Nintendo for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The player controls Yoshi, a friendly dinosaur, on a quest to reunite baby Mario with his brother Luigi, who has been kidnapped by Kamek. As a Super Mario series platformer, Yoshi runs and jumps to reach the end of each level while solving puzzles and collecting items with Mario's help. The game has a hand-drawn aesthetic and was the first in the franchise to have Yoshi as the main character, where it introduces his signature flutter jump and egg spawning abilities. After 4 years of development, Yoshi's Island was released in Japan in August 1995 and worldwide 2 months later. Some of the special effects were powered by the new Super Effects 2 microchip. The game was later ported to the Game Boy Advance as Super Mario Advance 3 Yoshi's Island in 2002. My personal story on Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island was I actually got this game for Christmas. I was just absolutely blown away by the boss design, the level design, and its real use of the SFX Chip 2 was just incredible. Nothing like this existed on the Super Nintendo. In fact, when the Nintendo 64 came out, I often said, Yoshi's Island looks better than the Nintendo 64, which I was playing Mario 64 at that time. It's just the way that the sprites were. They were colorful, vibrant, the music was great, and the game was super rewarding. The only annoying thing was when Mario actually got off your back and started flying around crying all the time. That crying was certainly annoying, and it made sure that you went and got him back as soon as possible. A great game, a must play, and easily one of my favorite games for the Super Nintendo.
Look, Tiko, it's Final Fantasy III.
Final Fantasy VI, also known as Final Fantasy III from its initial North America release in 1994, is a role-playing video game developed and published by Square for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Final Fantasy VI is the 6th main entry in the Final Fantasy series, and the first to be directed by someone other than the series creator. Set in a world with technology resembling the Second Industrial Revolution, the game's story follows an expanding cast that includes 14 permanent playable characters. The narrative depicts numerous, more mature themes throughout the entire game than its previous installments, including a rebellion against immoral military dictatorship, pursuit in the magical arms race, use of chemical weapons in warfare, depictions of violent and apocalyptic confrontations, several personal redemption arcs, teenage pregnancy, and the renewal of hope and life itself. This game received widespread critical acclaim, particularly for its graphics, soundtrack, story, characters, setting, and mature themes. Widely considered by many one of the best video games of all time, and the best game of the Final Fantasy series. What I'm not going to do is spoil this game for anybody, but I can tell you firsthand that the praise that this game gets is completely deserved. The music, the story is so crazy, the graphics are incredible, the battle system's great, and this is Final Fantasy on steroids. Still one of the darkest ones easily. I go back and I play this one quite often. I played this when I was playing Chrono Trigger, which is another great game. Actually, it's interesting, some of the sound samples are the exact same between both of the games. This is a masterpiece. You must play this at least once in your life if you love RPG.
Tiko, Diddy's Conquest. Or is it Diddy Kong Quest? Man, I don't know anymore.
Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest is a 1995 platform video game developed by Rare and published by Nintendo for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It was released on the 21st of November 1995 in Japan, and in December 1995 in North America and Europe. It is the second installment of the Donkey Kong Country series, and serves as a direct sequel to Donkey Kong Country. The story revolves around Diddy Kong and his close friend Dixie Kong, who try to rescue Donkey Kong after he is abducted by King K. Rool. The game is set on Crocodile Isle, with 8 worlds of varying environments totaling 52 levels. The game utilizes the same Silicon graphics technology from the original, which features the use of pre-rendered 3D imagery. Diddy's Conquest received critical acclaim, being widely regarded as one of the greatest 2D platformers ever made. Praise was directed at the graphics, gameplay, and soundtrack. It was the second best-selling game of 1995, the 6th best-selling game on the Super Nintendo, and the highest-selling SNES title to not be packaged with the system. In many ways, Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest really did improve on everything from Donkey Kong Country. However, while it's not a popular opinion, I do prefer the original Donkey Kong Country over 2. Many people love Donkey Kong 2 because of its soundtrack, its gameplay, and virtually it improved on everything from the original. However, nostalgia really has me blinded. I really like 1 over 2, but 2 is an amazing game, and many would say that it is the better game. It's just for me, it just didn't have the same impact on me as a kid. Now, which is the better game? I'll let you be the judge of that.
What's this? Is this Mario Paint? Do you like Mario Paint?
Mario Paint is a video game released in 1992 by Nintendo for use with the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It is packaged with the Super Nintendo mouse peripheral. The game was developed by Nintendo Research and Development 1 and Intelligent Systems. According to the manual, 2 parts of Mario Paint are meant to familiarize the user with the SNES mouse, the title screen where users can click on each logo text for surprise to occur, and the fly swatting minigame named Gnat Attack, where the player swats 100 insects before fighting a boss named King Watinga. Mario Paint is one of the best-selling Super NES games at 2.3 million copies. Mario Paint's possible age appeal and amount of features were discussed in reviews, while Nintendo Power and GamePro suggested that it had enough features and interactive elements to fascinate a person of any age with even a remote interest in artistic ventures. My personal experience with Mario Paint was actually at my friend Jiri's, which we featured on the channel quite a few times now. He actually had Mario Paint, and I was blown away by the mouse. At the time, we had personal computers with Windows 95 and Windows 95 Plus. However, it was really cool to be able to do editing at a very basic level on Mario Paint. And the way they incorporated the games into the design was really fun. This game has unlimited play value. People play it still today. I actually own it currently with the SNES mouse, and I've actually featured it on this channel, which you can see right now. I absolutely love this game. I think it's more than just a game though. It really does start people on the path of digital editing and design. So to me, in some ways, if this was your first introduction into graphics editing, you had a fun journey, and I can tell you that you probably go back and play this today.
Tiko, are you ready to go on out of this world adventure?
Out of This World, also known as Another World, is a 1991 cinematic platformer action-adventure designed by Eric Chahai and published by Delphine Software. The game tells the story of Lester, a young scientist who, as a result of an experiment gone wrong, finds himself on a dangerous alien world where he is forced to fight for survival. Another World was developed by Chahai alone over a period of about 2 years with help with the soundtrack from Jean-Francois Freitas. Chahai developed his own game engine, completing all the game's art and animation in vector form to reduce memory use, with some use of rotoscoping to help plan out character movements. Both narratively and gameplay-wise, he wanted the game to be told with little to no language or user interface elements. Out of This World was innovative in its use of cinematic effects in both real-time and cutscenes, which earned the game praise among critics and commercial success. It also influenced a number of other video games and designers, inspiring such titles as Ico, Metal Gear Solid, Silent Hill, and Delphine's later Flashback. I actually purchased this game because it was cheap, and it was at one of the local electronics stores. I saw the box art and I said, okay, well, you know what, it's worth a shot, I've heard of this game. The first thing that I realized about this game was that it was insanely difficult. The graphics were kind of funny, I found myself laughing at it, but the soundtrack was incredible. It sounded like a movie. There's nothing else that I can really say about this game other than the fact it was a real cinematic experience. However, it did suffer badly from slowdowns, and it's one of the only Super Nintendo games that I know of that had loading screens. Overall though, this was a great game. The atmosphere was unlike anything else that I've ever seen in a video game at the time, and the cinematics were out of this world, pardon the pun.
Tiko, let's do a home run derby.
Ken Griffey Jr. Presents Major League Baseball is a Super Nintendo baseball game that was released in 1994. The game has a Major League Baseball license, but not the Major League Baseball Players Association license, meaning that the game has real stadiums and real teams, but not real players, except Ken Griffey Jr. The fictitious players have the same statistics as their real-world counterparts, and the game comes with a name-changing feature that allows players to change the athletes' names. Nintendo released a portable version of the game in 1997 for the Game Boy, with real players and stats from the 1996 season. The gameplay is similar to its predecessors, though it is sometimes sluggish due to hardware restrictions. The Super Nintendo version came with the promotional Griffey collector's card packed inside and was a major commercial success with 1.2 million units sold. When I was a kid, this was our go-to baseball game. I absolutely loved the home run derbies, and me and Joy-Coy play it today. It's one of my favorite sports games ever made, and certainly my favorite baseball game ever made for any system. I highly recommend this game.
Hey Tico, let's go on a magical quest.
The Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse, the first game in the series, was released for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System during 1992 and 1993 and later re-released for the Game Boy Advance in 2002, featuring 6 different levels with 4 different special outfits. It stars Mickey Mouse on a journey to save his dog Pluto, who was dognapped by the Emperor Pete during a game of catch with his friends Donald Duck and Goofy. The game, and especially its outfit system and graphics, received mostly positive reviews, but was criticized for being relatively short. My personal experience with this game was actually as a rental. I rented it just because I didn't know what else to rent, and I've said, you know what, the box art kind of looks cool. So we gave it a shot. And man, were we actually impressed. This game had way more depth than it should have. It's just another example of Capcom and teaming up with Nintendo and just creating masterpieces that you would never expect. The outfit system was really cool, music was great, the bosses were really well designed, and overall the levels and the atmosphere of this game still really haven't been touched. I'm surprised there wasn't a direct sequel to this game, because really it was very unique and it stands up well today. I do believe if you get a chance, this is a game that you should go back and try. It is 2 players like I said, and it's a lot of fun. It's good for an afternoon of playing something with a lot of imagination and really a really unique outfit system.
Tiko, who wants to attack very aggressively?
Contra 3: The Alien Wars is a 1992 run-and-gun video game developed and published by Konami for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It is the 3rd home console entry in the Contra series after Contra 1987 and Super C 1988 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. In PAL regions, it was retitled Super Probotector Alien Rebels, and the player characters were replaced by robots. Contra 3 received positive reviews, with critics praising its arcade quality derived from its sound and visual design. It has been called one of the best Contra games in the retrospective reviews. It was ported to the Game Boy as Contra the Alien Wars 1994 by Factor 5, where it received positive reviews for its Super Game Boy enhancements. Konami also released a Game Boy Advance port titled Contra Advance. My personal experiences with Contra 3: The Alien Wars was that I actually played it at a friend's house at first. It was brutally hard, but it was a 2-player simultaneous run-and-gun co-op shooter. So we got to play it, and we got to the Terminator boss, and that's where we wiped and had to restart. The thing about it was, I never found it cheap. I always found it was fair, because when you learned something, you could usually repeat your successes, which allowed you to get through the game fairly. I was one of the only kids that I knew that could actually complete this game without using the Konami 30 Lives code. Would I recommend this game to anybody? Yes, Contra 3: The Alien Wars is a masterpiece run-and-gun, and certainly one of the best Contra games ever made. There is a Sega equivalent, Contra Hardcore, that is amazing as well, but it's different. Completely different game, but I recommend you play both.
Oh, right, they're gonna...
Flames, run.
Right. Oh, right, oh. It's taking that too slow.
Bombs.
Oh, really?
Oh, they're after me.
Which way is this going? Okay. It goes all the way around? Oh, jeez.
Oh, we got him.
Tiko, what's this? Oh, it's a game that never released here in North America. I'm glad I got it, legitimately.
Terranigma is a 1995 action role-playing game for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, developed by Quintet. Manga artist Kamui Fujiwara is credited with the character designs. The game tells the story of Earth's resurrection by the hands of a boy named Ark, and its process from the evolution of life to present day. It was published by Enix in Japan before Nintendo localized the game for release in English, German, French, Spanish versions in Europe and Australia. The game has never been officially released in North America. The game keeps a top-down perspective view of the world and utilizes an action-based real-time battle system that allows the player to perform different techniques depending on whether the protagonist is running, jumping, attacking, or using a combination of these three actions. Each attack is meant for dealing more damage to certain kinds of enemies, though in most cases there is little to no difference, regardless of the technique used. Projectiles launched at Ark can be blocked by a guard technique, which is otherwise ineffective against melee attacks. With each victory, experience points are gained, increasing the protagonist's level and a maximum hit points, strength, defense, and luck. Slain enemies sometimes leave behind gems, which can be used to buy weapons, armors, healing items, and spells. There are no magic points in the game. All spells take the form of a one-time use item instead. The player must collect magic rocks and take them to the magic shop to have them transformed into magic rings and summon medals. These items are used up upon casting and turned back to magic rocks, which can be exchanged for new spells again. Upon defeating bosses and completing miscellaneous tasks, new types of magic become available. My first experiences with this game was actually through emulation, through the SNES. The fact was, it wasn't available in North America, but with such a beautiful game going to waste was certainly a pity. I did know of its existence before I played it, but when I played it, I was blown away. It's part of the same series as Illusion of Gaia, certainly one of my favorite SNES games. The combat is cool, the story is incredible, the effects in the game are amazing, and the music, I can't get that out of my head. The music is top tier. This is one of the best looking and best playing games on the Super Nintendo, and it's a real shame that it was not released here in North America, because it would have been a day one purchase for me.
Who's a good boy and loves Chrono Trigger?
It's Christmas 1995. After seeing the Nintendo Power articles about this game, I knew I had to ask for it for Christmas. What I did not realize was how little up to this point I knew about the genre of RPGs. We have all heard it before. Chrono Trigger is a great game. Well, I can assure you that my body and my mind were not ready for the gift that I had received. Never before was I drawn into a world like this. The music was on a different level. You could feel every bit of sweat that was put into the music. Everything about Chrono Trigger screamed pure passion, and the world was not ready. Saying Chrono Trigger is my favorite game ever does not do it justice. It is my favorite experience ever in the visual medium. Every single character's story arc had me completely committed. Chrono was me. I lived that game through his eyes. Every single sword strike, every single lightning bolt, that was all me. Teaming up with Frog, I knew damn well Magus was going down, and Meryl was my girlfriend. What blew me away was how often that I was approaching the end of the game only to get the story completely U-turned into something else. I honestly thought Magus was the final boss. Not only was I wrong there, but he can actually join the team? What? How could I team up with somebody so evil? However, after battling him, I knew his powers were too good to pass up. Not to mention his interactions with NPCs and the team were so amazing. Chrono Trigger has time travel elements that actually make sense. You do something in the past and the future changes. Unless the future refused to change. Lavos, the big baddie of this game, is straight out of H.P. Lovecraft. A time-devouring alien that seems too powerful to even comprehend defeating. The land of Zeal is where I would live if I could live in a game world. A sky paradise where science and magic are one and the same. The two pieces of music that I would stop and listen to for hours imagining that I was there in Zeal were the Zeal theme and Shala's theme. Those pieces of music touched me in a way that nothing else did. but maybe perhaps the ending credits theme, because that's amazing too. I have to mention New Game Plus here too. How many times did you wish that you could play a game with all the equipment that you had at the end to completely restart overpowered and re-experience the narrative even faster? Well, that was an option here. It's the first time I ever saw it and I loved it. Chrono Trigger has multiple endings, multiple paths, side missions that are simply outstanding. I cannot understate this to you. You have never played a game like Chrono Trigger unless you played Chrono Trigger, and you will probably never play one as good again. I would like to thank Square for the game of a lifetime on my favorite system ever, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and the games that raised us. Cheers, guys. This video was a labor of love. The Super Nintendo is a system that really stands the test of time. It is my favorite game system ever, and Chrono Trigger is my favorite game ever. I love all the games that were mentioned here. They're not in any particular order. I put Chrono Trigger at the end because it stands out as the best game of all time. Thank you everyone so much for watching. That's going to do it for this Games That Raised Us episode. If you like this, please like down below. Don't forget to comment, and if you haven't, please consider subscribing for more Games That Raised Us and other retro content.
Tiko, what do you like? Do you like Super Nintendo? Do you like Super Nintendo? Is it your favorite? Oh, is it your favorite? Is it your favorite?